Hey, I'm Brandon. Have you ever wondered how bad a pandemic can get? During the Black Death, nearly every other person in Europe dropped dead. Talk about a rough game of tag. The world had never suffered such a deadly plague before, nor has it seen anything like it since. So how did the Grim Reaper rack up such a high score on this one? Well, there was this fancy word that didn't really exist in the Middle Ages. Sanitation. Done taking a poop? Throw it out the window. Need a bath? Just splash some water on. See a cat roaming about? Send that demon straight back to hell. Probably would have been smart to keep more of these critters around to hunt vermin. Because if there's one thing rats are pros at, it's giving free rides to pestilence. And so, with fleas as stowaways, the Black Death snuck into Europe and made itself at home. The infectious disease swept across the continent, like some sort of illness that one could catch. A contagion, if you will. The victims were stricken with sores that oozed pus and blood. They poured sweat and snot, often with a little projectile vomit for good measure. This is when another fancy word entered the vocabulary. Quarantine, which means 40 days. Although if you were dealing with this stuff, good luck making it past a week. Those stricken were visited by plague doctors wearing these weird bird costumes. Because hey, what's a more comforting sight for the dying than a goddamn vulture? The learned folk thought the spread was caused by miasma, or bad air. Which makes some sense, I suppose, as rotten food both stinks and makes you clutch the toilet after eating it. To guard against breathing the stench, plague doctors cram fragrant herbs into their masked beaks. Obviously huffing incense did jack squat, other than maybe making them high. Yet given what we now know about germs, the bird ensemble probably wasn't entirely useless. I mean, it did cover the dock from head to toe, like a medieval hazmat suit. Many Christians saw the plague as a sign that Jesus was a tad miffed about how his church was being run. This spurred people to rise up and cleanse the temple, weeding out corruption at every level of, nah, I'm kidding. They actually just beat the shit out of themselves with whips to get back on God's good side. As you can imagine, their festering wounds did nothing but spread the disease even further. Bravo, gents, bravo. But religion also did a lot of good during the Black Death. Countless priests and nuns fed and cared for the afflicted, often at the cost of their own lives. The downside to the sudden loss of so many fine clergy is that their replacements were, how shall we say, less than qualified. Corpses piled up and overwhelmed the public. Some places dug lawn trenches and buried the remains in mass graves. Others just piled them up like a garbage dump and let the elements do their thing. For there's no better way to stop a pandemic than serving it as a buffet to the wildlife. Still others found more practical uses. While the Mongols laid siege to an Italian city, the plague ravaged their forces. The townspeople laughed at their enemies' misfortune. So the attackers loaded infected bodies onto catapults and launched them over the walls. As the trapped inhabitants were pelted with diseased flesh and succumbed in droves, the Mongols chuckled back, "Looks like the joke's on you." And thus the Mongols turned lemons into lemonade. A tall, cold glass of biological warfare. After 7 brutal years, the plague burned itself out, leaving devastated kingdoms in its wake. That said, if you overlook the apocalyptic death toll, ruthless persecutions, and civilization almost collapsing, there was a silver lining in the Black Death. It hastened the end of the old feudal system. Because it wiped out half the labor force, the surviving peasants gained a lot more leverage with their masters. Their lords needed every last able body to work their fields. So with a little collective bargaining, the serfs negotiated some better terms for themselves, such as receiving actual wages, gain a few more days off, and maybe like a newer hoe or something, which still meant their lives royally sucked, but a win's a win, I guess. So there's that. Thanks for watching Brandonica. If you liked this video, then subscribe for more. Until next time, see ya.